Welcome to VMblog's coverage of VMware Explore 2022 in San Francisco. Today we have the pleasure of having Samit Halvadia, who's the Chief Technology Officer at Rimo3. Welcome.
Hey, thanks, Brian. Thanks, Dave. I'm excited to be here. This is my first time actually getting a chance to do a video interview with you guys in a Q&A. So I've been fortunate enough to write some predictions and blogs on VMblog in the past. So it's good to actually do this face to face.
Yeah, we're glad to have you.
Good to see you. Maybe you can start by giving us kind of a quick overview of the company.
Yeah, sure. So Rimo3 is really kind of a automated platform to help people move their application portfolio away from legacy into modern. And really what that means is, you know, we have such a huge enterprise customer base that's been focused on on-prem with config manager, legacy management planes, legacy application MSI formats. And as we've started seeing people kind of move towards this more hybrid work style and more DAS-based workspaces and VDI in general, we're starting to see the traditional kind of endpoint management that's always been sitting here in desktop engineering and virtualization start to kind of combine and blur, right? And what we're trying to help folks do is take all of that legacy debt and all of the legacy applications and start helping them modernize towards a more hybrid friendly workspace delivery mechanism. So that means whether it's newer OSs, whether it's moving away from physical to more virtual and DAS-based offerings, whether it's getting off config manager to more modern management planes like Intune or like Nerdio or modern application formats, getting away from kind of MSI towards MSIX or app volumes or some of these other technologies. We're trying to help folks understand that based on what their desired outcome and workspace delivery methodology looks like, how we can leverage automation to get their applications to tomorrow.
And if you could, maybe talk a little bit about how you guys partner with VMware.
Yeah, you know, so just a little about our history too, you know, so we, Rimo3 was really kind of based off of a need that we saw in the market. So our CEO and myself, we come from AppDNA, which was a technology that was acquired by Citrix back in 2011. And really what we'd focused on at that time was helping people get off of, you know, Windows XP at the same time that they were moving to Windows 7. They were deprecating 16-bit applications and 16-bit code and moving towards 64-bit. We built an automated testing engine that helped folks understand the risk associated with a migration for their app portfolio at scale, leveraging static analysis. And when we were acquired by Citrix, Citrix did the right thing and they embedded it in a lot of their platinum offerings and certain SKUs to help their customers continue remaining modern. But in 2019-20, the problem hadn't gone away and Citrix had made the decision to end of life AppDNA, but the app problem still remained. So for Rimo3, what we kind of focused on is, you know, I still believed that that problem needed to be solved. And in fact, the only thing that was happening is that problem was exacerbating because there were more app formats, there were more ways to deliver workspaces, whether it was cloud-based, whether it was actually physical, whether it was virtual. And now take that, add the sheer volume of change management that happens with new feature releases of Windows and, you know, security baseline profile configurations. My whole goal was to build an engine that can help people take the context of their operating environments and their workspaces that they wanted to deliver and ensure that their applications can migrate with it. So for us, when we started thinking about the history of Rimo3, the first thing we went back and did, back to your point, David, about the partners, is our ecosystem was really based around everyone in EUC that did anything around workspace delivery, be it Citrix, VMware, Microsoft with AVD and Windows 365. because ultimately we wanted to deliver applications to any of those workspaces, regardless of where they sat. So back to your question about actually partnering with VMware, it's been a very interesting one for us, because what we've started seeing people kind of understand is that unless you're born in the cloud, you are going to have a co-management, if you will, of different types of environments. Some will be physical, some will be virtual, some will be cloud-based. And VMware, being a leader in the EUC space around desktop, virtualization, as well as not just VDI, but now starting to play with Horizon Cloud Services, app volumes. They've got their fingers in a lot of different pies around delivering workspaces. And you'll see a big announcement from that team coming up at VMware Explore. So I won't steal any of that thunder. But what we're going to start seeing is that applications are going to be centrally critical to any strategy around delivering workspaces. And VMware, as a partner, has recognized that the importance of modernizing these applications, testing these applications, and migrating these applications so that they can ultimately manage those workspaces very effectively. So the nature of our partnership has been extremely complementary in the fact that they're looking to make apps the center of their workspace delivery strategy, and we're looking to do the same thing and automate that process.
Now, you've already kind of talked about it, and it seems like applications is really your strong point. But if you're a VMware shop that has a VMware implementation, what would you say your biggest problems are that you solve for them?
Yeah, so if you've already got a VMware implementation, you've got a couple of things that you have going on, right? Number one, you might be leveraging VDI and its traditional persistent desktop virtualization capability. In that particular case, an interesting use case for us is continually ensuring that the change, whether it's a new feature OS update from Windows, whether it's a cumulative update, whether it's a new version of an application, it's really around risk mitigation for ongoing change management. So when you're running Windows 10 in a persistent, Horizon environment, and you want to move to Windows 11, or you want to apply your January cumulative update, or you want to take a new version of the application, leveraging automation to ensure that that change will not break anything in your existing environment, that's the value that we provide, right? So for existing install base, it's really around change management. And for net new, or people that are looking to migrate to certain modern, so like let's say you're moving to Horizon Cloud Services being hosted on Azure, right? In that case, you're actually going from potentially an on-prem or virtual infrastructure towards a DAS-based one. In that sense, there's another migration. You have to make sure that not only will it work in that particular operating environment, you have to know whether or not that application is cloud friendly or cloud ready or app falls ready.
Now the EUC space is a little it's getting complicated. There are a lot more players now than there ever have been. At the show, if an attendee walks up to you guys at the booth, how do you explain or dig in a little deeper into your technology and what you're offering? But maybe more importantly, how do you convince them or talk to them and explain how what your technology is and does is unique or differentiated in the market?
That's an interesting question, because I think that the app problem has been around long enough that people have almost become nihilistic about it, right? You'll have one of two sides of the spectrum. You don't often have a middle ground. You'll have, what, I'm not going to test my applications anymore. I'm going to roll out the patch, and I'm going to assume that there's going to be a break fix of about 10% of my install base. Fingers crossed, spray and pray, and I'll test my 5 critical applications to make sure that they don't break, right? And when you start thinking about it from that perspective, it's kind of a bit of a sorry state, but that's where we've come to. And it's not because people don't care. In fact, it's quite the opposite. It's because people do care, but they don't necessarily have the bandwidth, the resources, the tooling, or the money to go through and do the thorough testing that they might want to do to ensure the high level of deliverable and productivity without any disruption to business continuity. And when I start talking about the risk mitigation and the fact that what we're really doing is we're leveraging automation to do the mundane tasks, the boring stuff, the stuff that you can push a button and it's going to cost you 12 cents of compute to know whether or not your applications are going to theoretically break with a new patch. People genuinely do get excited about that, right? I mean, again, it's the concept of saying, I've just saved a human from having to test 5 critical applications and then potentially spend, 12 hours fixing 10% of your application's portfolio that broke on a failed deployment or a relatively failed deployment. If you can proactively get this data, because on Tuesday you've clicked the button, on Wednesday you have a report, on Thursday, you can just make sure that you test your most critical applications with user acceptance testing. And on Friday, you do a broad deployment. People's eyes kind of light up at that point, because at that human has not been, or the human resource has not been necessarily stuck doing all of this work. They're just interpreting data at that point, right? We've done the mundane work, and it's cost them nearly nothing aside from a little bit of compute. And then ultimately they get a much more successful deployment. So that's the way that I like to typically position it, right? Because again, it's not for lack of caring, it's for lack of resource, it's for lack of time. Because I talked to a couple of these folks and, they have, I can't quite remember that company out of Detroit, but they did a white paper on security. And they said, 2 things, right? 2 really interesting things that stood out. Number one, 100% of ransomware attacks could have been, or security-based breaches could have been, there were fixes for them available at that point, right? So when you see a patch come out and a cumulative update, people go in there and look at what's been fixed, and they just assume people won't deploy it on time and take advantage of those vulnerabilities, right? And the second thing that stood out to me was really the fact that ultimately the current time frame, in fact, let me pose it to you. How long do you think it takes after day 0 that a cumulative update is released for an enterprise to deploy a broad deployment of that cumulative update?
A week.
No idea.
It's
2
T,
weeks.
it's T plus 45 days.
Wow.
Yeah. T plus 45 days. Now, Microsoft has done some really cool stuff with auto patch, which kind of condenses that down to 21 days, but it's still 4 deployment rings over 3 weeks, right? Like, I'm saying, why bother? I mean, it's just boring testing. It's just boring work. Let a computer do it.
So talking about VMware Explore, what announcements is Rimo3 making at the show?
We've got a couple of big announcements coming out. The first one is really around our ability to help VMware customers and their existing install base not only continually keep their environment secure and compress their time to deployment, but the big one is around our first phase of integration that we have with the app volumes file format. So one of the interesting areas that we've seen is that as people start deploying to VMware as a management plane, whether it's to AVD or wherever they're deploying it, AppVols is a wonderful technology around containerization. In my opinion, it's one of the best. And what you're starting to see is that people are moving away from legacy formats, and they want to move to AppVols. They want to move to FlexApp. They want to move to MSIX. These are really great pieces of technology where they can go in there and start mitigating a lot of the risk of Windows rot and things that typically create a poor user experience or security breaches, right? So in our latest release that we're announcing at VMware Explore, we are fully supporting the app volumes format. So now you can onboard your app volumes packages, and you have the ability to automatically discover them and automate the testing of those app volumes packages as part of the platform, which is incredibly exciting for us.
Now, VMware, as the host of the show, they're going to be talking about big picture things on the keynote stage. What big themes or trends heading into 2023 is Rimo3 most interested in?
For us, as you can tell, I'm very much an app nerd. So everything around the applications is incredibly interesting to me. So for me, the fact that you're going to start seeing that VMware is touting this message around an application-centric workspace delivery model, that is something that I believe is going to be fundamentally critical to ensure the portability of applications and workspaces for different types of user segments. So I'm really interested in understanding what those announcements and what that strategy inside of VMware looks like. Another interesting one for me is this concept of co-management, right? I mean, people talk about co-management being like, oh, I'm keeping some on-prem config manager and I'm doing some stuff in Intune for MDM and MAM and cloud-based DAS management. No, I'm thinking of co-management in a much broader sense, where it's really around, okay, how are you going to leverage your workspace delivery mechanism and your modern management plane to take out a lot of the complexity associated with physical, virtual, and cloud-based device management, whether it's OS delivery, whether it's workspace management, whether it's security baseline profiling, whether it's application delivery, whether it's conversion. Those are all really interesting things. And Dave, you said this a little bit earlier, EUC is getting really complex, and it doesn't have to, right? It's only getting complex because we have more and more options around how to best serve our customers. And in terms of the users, right? When I say our customers, I mean the install base, the users themselves. Because there's a lot of that flexibility, we need to have tooling and platforms and partners in the space that can help alleviate some of that manual strain. So any places where, if you remember my blog from January, where we talked about the rise of automation, that was kind of my prediction. It was really just going back to that. It's really very much focused on taking all these operational mundane things like image management, like workspace delivery, and building automation pipelines around them so that we can still take our human capital, as we want to call it, that sounds really terrible, and let them focus on innovation, right? I mean, automate the mundane is still what I think I'm most excited about in 2023. There's a lot of opportunity to still do that.
And before we let you go, it would be great if we could get a demo of the product. Is that something you'd be able to do for us?
Absolutely. I love showing off my baby. You ready for it?
Sure.
Absolutely.
So when we actually talk about automation and moving from legacy to modern, what are we talking about, right? In this case, what I'll show in the demo is a quick overview of where we take our operational workflow and help people get off of legacy. So we're able to pull your applications in from some directory or file share or from config manager, and then we run it through an automated discovery and testing process, right? So in this case, what I've wanted to do is I wanted to say, well, today I'm running Windows 10 Enterprise 21H2. I want to move to AVD hosted on Windows 11 in 21H2, right? So what I'm quickly able to see is that the majority of my applications, as they are today, 78%, will be able to move to AVD, which is an exciting thing to see right off the bat, right? This took no human intervention to get this type of data. But what I am able to see is that with our intelligent smoke test, we were able to pull these applications in and automate the testing. So if you take a look at the overall process from our side, what we're able to quickly do is we're able to take our task runner, which is basically our agent that's sitting up in your AVD environment that you're looking to deploy to. So it's got all your GPO settings, it's got all of your security baselines, your pre-installed applications, basically your gold image that you want to deploy to. This contextual relevance is really important because vanilla to vanilla typically works when you're moving an application from one to the next, right? So it's when you actually get the additional environmental variables, as I like to call them, such as GPOs, Windows features being turned on and off, and custom builds that you start seeing issues. So here we've actually provisioned the task runner in this environment that we want to deploy to, right? We're seeing that it's an AVD environment. And we go through the process of automating the installation of this app-v package. Then we actually smoke test the package. Again, this is all done without human intervention, right? The task runner goes through, and our intelligent smoke test has 2 out of its 3 patents already awarded, with the third one pending. It's not RPA, it's fully automated with a training model that focuses on understanding, okay, what are the shortcuts that have been laid down during the installation? And then it'll click through each of the executables. And then as dialog boxes pop up, it'll try to create more children processes by doing an intelligent click, right? So this is by no means an extensive user acceptance test or anything like that. But what it is it's a great way for us to scale across a huge volume of applications. Think thousands over the course of a couple of days of compute. And what you're able to get is when something fails, we can actually take a look at the output, and we grabbed a screenshot of the failure. It worked fine on my Windows 10 environment because I had the .NET framework involved, right? I had it turned on and installed as a dependency. This one did not. So when I tried to actually install it, it was fine. Nothing happened. It's when you launch it and try to execute the application that we were able to grab the error itself and say, great, we're missing a Windows feature. And because we don't have any rules that we're testing against, we're just executing the application, we have no guardrails, which is great because then you're able to figure out things like an error that you would never have thought to make a rule for. And in this case, like while we're going through the process, what you're able to see is that we actually capture a video of the test being executed as well, and bang, as the error happens, you're able to grab that screen and remediate the application. So what it's done in this case is that for 22% of the applications, we've grabbed screenshots and said, guys, you need to touch these and fix them. But the other 78%, go ahead, deploy it. You're good to go. You can roll out Windows 11. So right off the bat, we've just answered a couple of questions, right? Number one, can this application move to the cloud? Number two, is it something that will work on my build of Windows 11, right? And then number three, the ones that don't, what's wrong with them? Can you help me fix them? Right. So from our perspective, our goal is to really drive and give you the data and the confidence to de-risk any change deployment that you're doing. Now, the really great thing here is that we now have support for app volumes as well. So as part of our deployments, we actually took 7-zip, and we've got a couple others in here, where we're able to come in and test the application itself. So here we've gone through, and you'll see that when we actually install 7-zip, what we're really doing is mounting it, right? So we've got the VHD in there. We've invoked the SV service so that it's actually running, and now it's fully mounted and functional in that particular environment. Then we'll smoke test it, grab the video and the output, make sure that it works, and then give you a green light that this is something that's ready for deployment. Now, by the time VMware Explore, I always call it VMworld, so it's still kind of that for me. But by the time that Barcelona rolls around, there's going to be an even more exciting announcement about our enhanced support for app volumes as well. So you're going to see a lot more coming in the future as our partnership with VMware continues to deepen. But what's really exciting is now we've got support for MSIX if you're looking to deploy it in a VMware environment. We've got support for app vols. We've got support for traditional deployments of traditionally installed applications. And what's great about that is that now you have kind of the run of you have kind of the run of all application formats that you can test against for any workspace delivery. So what's been really exciting for us is that we've actually been able to start capturing for our own selves performance along the smoke tests and see how they compare against traditional installed applications, which has just turned into a data nerd and app nerd's dream scenario here for us.
Well, thanks for that great demo. We really appreciate that. But before we let you go, where can folks go if they want to learn more about Rimo3 and some of the things that you discussed today?
Great question. We've got quite a few resources available. So if you check out our YouTube channel for Rimo3, you'll see a bunch of great technical videos around the actual platform itself, but also really interesting podcasts, in my opinion, that I sit down with other leaders in the EUC community and chat about kind of the future and the past and what the landscape of EUC looks like. You can also go to Rimo3.com, where you'll have access to a bunch of our white papers, a bunch of blogs, and some really great technical content there as well. Or you can stop by the booth if you happen to be at VMworld or VMware Explore in San Francisco. We're going to be doing live demos, and we'll have a great booth set up at number 1907. So please come check us out.
Great. All right. Well, thank you again for talking to VMblog, and we hope you have a great show.
Thank you. And thank you again for the opportunity to be on this. This is a lot of fun, and hopefully it was useful for all the listeners and viewers out there.